It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's Halloween, witches. I hope you're excited. I am. I love spooky season. Today, to get us in the spirit of Halloween, we will be discussing the dark origins of this holiday and its traditions. Starting off this countdown, we have Samhain, which I always pronounce as Samhain, but apparently it's Samhain. Don't know how, but okay. Anyways, this was the Celtic festival that was celebrated in Ireland, Scotland, and the Isle of Man. It was said that at this time the connection between the other world and our world thins, so it makes it easier for spirits and the souls of the dead to come into our world. So they would celebrate the dead and make offerings and sacrifices for them. Another part of this tradition included having the Celtic priest wear dead animal heads and skins and go around making predictions about the future. Most of the stuff they did to celebrate this holiday was done so that the spirits wouldn't get mad at them. Moving on at number 9, we have the deal with the devil. Turns out that jack-o'-lanterns have a pretty dark origin story. They symbolize a deal with the devil gone wrong. So basically, one night a man named Stingy Jack ended up tricking and trapping the devil. He then said he would only let the devil go if he promised that he would never go to hell. I mean, crossing and trying to outsmart the devil is the last thing you should do. So the devil was like, "Sure, my dude, no problem." But what Jack did not realize was that just because he's not going to hell doesn't mean that he's going to heaven. So in the end, when Jack died, he ended up in purgatory, just wandering around for eternity. In the end, he used a turnip and a piece of fiery coal from the devil to create a lantern. That's why it's called jack-o'-lantern. I think it should have been stingy jack-o'-lantern though, that would have been funny. Coming in at number 8, we have the evil spirits. So here is another theory as to how jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkins became associated with Halloween. First off, turnips were used back then before pumpkins. They would hollow out the turnip and carve them into scary faces. This was done in order to scare off any spirits. Then they would light them with a candle or a piece of smoldering coal. The lanterns were then placed in the windows or doorways of their home, hoping that the face they carved was scary enough to scare off the evil spirits and welcome their ancestors inside. In our 7th spot, we have the bats. There are a couple of animals and things that are specifically associated with Halloween, like black bats. How did this happen? Well, there was a creepy myth that many believed from back in the day. The myth was that if a bat was spotted flying around a person's house 3 times, then it meant someone in that house would pass away soon. It was also believed to be bad luck if a bat flew into the person's house. It also meant that someone in the house was going to die. If the bat landed on one person in particular, it meant that that was the person who was dead. In the 1800s, bats were caught drinking the blood of cattle in Central and South America, so people immediately then labeled them as vampires. Then in 1897, Bram Stoker's Dracula depicted vampires shapeshifting into bats, so people were like, yeah, bats and vampires should be feared and they'll come and get you on Halloween. Moving on to number 6, we have these spiders. Spiders are also associated with Halloween. How did this happen? Well, back in the day, they were involved in a number of eerie superstitions. One of them was if a spider falls into a candle or flame and burns up, it meant that witches were nearby. But if you spot a spider on Halloween, it meant that the spirit of one of your ancestors was going to visit you that night. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you are with your ancestors.
Coming in at number 5 is the Mailman Halloween Day 2012. Halloween is always a lit time, it's very scary to the point some people claim they get scared to death. Exaggeration. Pussies. Now, a mailman in Denver was on his route making his deliveries and he showed up at one house that had a corpse decoration on its porch. Sort of annoyed at the placement of the decoration, he sort of sidestepped it out of the way to the side and delivered the mail. As he was walking away, he realized it wasn't a decoration from any angle. It was a real man that was dead. Turns out the dead man, Delport, had collapsed and died on his porch when returning from his night shift, but because of the timing of Halloween, it just didn't look sus. Honestly, you guys, imagine dying and someone thinking you're a Halloween decoration and just moving your body to the side. Like, biggest L I'd ever take, and I'm not even bloody alive. That's the biggest L. At number 4 is the costume gone wrong. Wow, I need to think of better names because I already did prank gone wrong. Sorry about that. Either way, Halloween Day 2012. An 8-year-old girl was so excited to dress up for Halloween in her hometown in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. She was at a relative's bonfire that night and went to play on the hillside when her aunt Janet saw her in the bushes. Assuming she was a skunk because of her black outfit, hat, and white tassel, she asked her son to shoot the pest. So Thomas went in and got the gun and shot the girl in the shoulder and abdomen. As soon as they realized the grave mistake that had happened, she was helicoptered to Pittsburgh Children's Hospital straight away. She remained in critical condition but did actually survive. What a close call. Like, oh my god, I would have never been able to live with that if I was Thomas or Janet. Like, killing my relative because I thought they were a skunk? Ugh, that would have been an even bigger L. Such an L. Filling our number 3 slot is Bad Candy, Halloween Day 1974. 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien was going trick-or-treating with his dad and sister in Pasadena, Texas. They got to a house where no one answered the door, and getting impatient, the kids ran off to the next house while their dad Ronald stayed behind. He re-emerged a few minutes later with a few pixie sticks, saying the person did come out and give it to him for his kids and their friends. They went home and Timothy had his pixie stick and started complaining that his stomach was hurting. Then he ran to the bathroom vomiting and convulsing and eventually went limp in his dad's arms and died on the way to the hospital. Turns out the pixie sticks he had a lethal dose of potassium cyanide in it. The police then went into panic mode trying to locate the other kids that had those same pixie sticks, and thankfully none of the other kids had ended up eating them, but they were all found with enough cyanide in them to kill 3 to 4 adults. In each one, not even all together. Ronald was never suspected until the investigation revealed he was over $100,000 in debt and could never hold down a job. He had 21 in the past few years. 21 jobs? What the hell? Turns out he had taken out a total of $60,000 worth of life insurance on his kids, which his wife was unaware of. He ended up killing his son to get the insurance and gave the candy to the other kids as well, just to lessen suspicion. You are complete and ultimate trash if you murder a family member, especially your own kid. Like, getting triggered. Stop getting triggered. Now at number 2 is Heads Will Roll, Halloween Day 2014. So Halloween decorations are always a good time, and that night a man was seen dragging a headless body out of his apartment and just leaving it on the street. Just casual, really. He came back out a few minutes later with the head and then proceeded to kick it to the other side of the street. And I know you're probably wondering what the hell onlookers thought of this, and most of them just thought it was a prank or that the man didn't want to use the decoration anymore. Either way, it was only an hour or so later when someone actually tried to move the body from the middle of the street did they realize the decoration wasn't a decoration. It was a real decapitated body. Turns out the body was Patricia Ward's, and her murderer was her son, who had a history of mental illness. He decapitated her, left her body on the street, and then killed himself by jumping in front of a train. This just ended well for no one, not Patricia, not her son, and not the person who moved her body. Like, no. Not happily ever after. And finally, at number 1 is The Cradle Snatcher, Halloween Day 1977. George Carter had just put his 19-month-old Nema into her crib in their home in Oklahoma. The next morning, he woke up to find the child missing from her cradle, despite all the windows and doors being locked. It's believed the abductor was hiding in her closet that night and snuck the child out when the parents fell asleep. A month later, a group of kids playing in an abandoned house 4 blocks away from the Carter home were horrified when the decomposed body of an infant came tumbling out of the house's fridge. That child ended up being Nema, but it doesn't even end there. Now, before the Carters lived in that house, it was home to another family that had 2 twin daughters. The year beforehand, the 3.5-year-old girls were stolen and lured out of their house in broad daylight. They were taken to a house by their frequent babysitter, 17-year-old Jacqueline Rubidoux, who told them to get in the fridge and that their aunt would come get them later for some ice cream. A few days later, cries were heard from the fridge by a few children playing in the house next door, so they went inside the house to find out what it was. One of the children opened the fridge door to find Tina jumping out at them. She had managed to stay alive by breathing through a hole in the fridge, but her twin had died from asphyxia. And you know who else called on Jacqueline to watch their child? Nema's parents. Tina even told officers that Jackie Boo was the one who took them to the house, but it failed to lead to a conviction because there was no physical evidence, despite her being shady as hell and the child literally identifying her. But let's just not believe her, shall I? lie. Let's just not believe her. Starting us off with number 10 is costume or reality. Halloween Day 1957. Betty Fabiano and her husband Peter were winding down and getting ready for bed when the doorbell rang. Despite it being past 11 p.m, they assumed that maybe it was a group of late night trick-or-treaters, and since they had some candy left, and so Peter went downstairs to answer the door and was greeted with a man wearing a mask. Betty heard some muffled voices downstairs, kind of like a man was impersonating a woman's voice, then a pop and then a thumb. She ran downstairs to discover Peter lying on the ground in a pool of blood with a gunshot wound on his chest. He died on the way to the hospital and suspects were hunted down immediately. Now here is like the biggest plot twist of plot twist history. Now the couple had their fair share of trouble, and while separated at one point, Betty started seeing a woman called Joan. That's not the plot twist, by the way. They decided to take another jab at their marriage, and Peter's only condition was that Betty could never see or speak about Joan again, to which she agreed. Joan obviously then had a motive and was questioned, and things she was saying just weren't adding up. She claimed that she was home all night, but neighbors claimed she left on a drive for a very long time. An anonymous tip led the police to the murder weapon, and then the assailant, 40-year-old Goldine Pizer. She admitted to killing Peter under the spell of a woman she was in love with, and that woman was Joan. Now coming in at number 9 is Don't Touch My Candy, Halloween Day 2011. A 55-year-old man residing in Chicago realized at 2:30 p.m. that his bag of candy was missing. Call the police. Now I don't know if that's referring to his bag of candy that he got during trick-or-treating, or the bag he was using to give candy to kids. I mean, you could be 50 and trick-or-treating. I'm not gonna judge you. Who am I to judge you? Either way, suddenly outraged by this realization, the man blamed his neighbor Maria Adams for stealing it, even though she really didn't. The man grabbed a bunch of steak knives from his kitchen and headed to her house, where he ended up stabbing her countless times. Maria desperately tried to defend herself by throwing plates at him, but it was just no use. She was in critical condition by the time she got to the hospital and ended up dying the next morning. The man was charged with first-degree murder and aggravated domestic battery. Can we just take a second, please, to just realize how ridiculous this is? Like, I simply just do not get it. He killed a woman over a bag of candy. Like, unless that bag had the secret of a life in it or the elixir of immortality, it's just not that deep. Get a new bag. At number 8 we have The Disappearance, Halloween Day 1955. Mother of 2 Marilyn Damon stopped at a food fair on Long Island to do a quick bit of shopping. She left 2-year-old Stephen and 7-month-old Pamela outside the store and told Stephen to watch his little sister. First of all, a 2-year-old cannot be left alone to watch anyone else. Like, that is still baby as hell. Like, what are you doing? 10 minutes later she came out and both children were nowhere to be found. Freaking the hell out, Marilyn starts looking everywhere and thankfully finds Pamela nearby, still in her stroller unharmed, but Stephen was still nowhere to be found. 5,000 people searched for him the next day, but detectives and police were never able to solve the case or find him. Honestly, I feel bad about it, I really do, but also you can't leave your kids alone ever, especially if they're that young. Like, a 2-year-old can't even defend themselves from anyone, how are they meant to defend their younger sibling as well? Like, Marilyn, you should have known better. 2 years old! What can you even do at 2 years old? Nothing! Can you even walk? No, you probably can. You know what I mean, it's young. Now filling on number 7 slot is The Note, Halloween Day 2012. Now Julie Keith was on her way to Kmart to buy some quick last minute cheap Halloween decorations in her hometown of Damascus, Oregon. That was a lot to say in one breath. Either way, inside the graveyard kit that she purchased, she found a handwritten letter from an inmate at the Chinese labor camp that had made the kit. The letter pleads for the reader to send it to the World Human Rights Organization because thousands of people were suffering in China. The writer claimed that them, along with a lot of other workers in the Massanjia labor camp, were forced to work 15-hour days with no weekends or holidays. If they refused, they would get tortured or beat and only got paid 10 yuan a month, which is about $1.61 a month. A month! The letter wasn't signed, but Julie did pass it on to the organization, and Kmart launched their own investigation into it as well. Thankfully, months later the labor camp was exposed and the inmates were freed. Woohoo, we love a happy ending! Now at number 6 is the prank gone wrong, Halloween Day 1998. 21-year-old Carl Jackson was driving through the Bronx with his girlfriend to pick up her son from a Halloween party. While stopped at an intersection, a bunch of teenagers started throwing eggs at his car, and so he got out to confront them. No one's about to throw eggs at me when my girl's in the car. I'll front on them. I'll square up. That's me as Carl. Either way, one of the teens, 17-year-old Curtis Sterling, pulled out a handgun and straight up shot Carl in the head, killing him instantly. And egging people on Halloween is quite a common prank, but it's gone awry so many times. Curtis ended up being sentenced to 20 years in prison, and every year on Halloween he gets a card from Carl's mother saying, "I'm glad you're still there." And honestly, kudos to her, I would do the exact same thing. What a senseless, unnecessary killing. Like, I'm getting mad at this list, I really am. It's pissing me off.
Okay, at number 5 now, we have Martha Moxley. The night before Halloween 1975, this 15-year-old went to a party. On the morning of Halloween, her body was found under a tree, mangled by a golf club. The case went cold for 25 years until Michael Skakel was charged with her murder. By that time, he was 40 years old. He was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. A year later, he appealed to the Supreme Court, citing prosecutorial misconduct. He was allowed out on bail in 2013, but in late 2016, the Supreme Court reinstated his murder conviction. He still pleads his innocence. Next up at number 4 now, we have the roommate murderer. On the night of Halloween 2004, roommates Leslie Mazzara, Adrienne Insogna, and Lauren Mianza went to bed after a quiet night of handing out candy to kids. Lauren woke up at 1 AM to the sound of a scuffle in the house. She panicked and ran into her backyard to hide. It was then that she saw a man climb out of a window in the house. She waited for a bit until he was gone and went back upstairs, only to find that her roommates had been brutally murdered. Over 1,500 people were interviewed, including one of their friends, Lily Prudhomme. Now, she was innocent, but her boyfriend, Eric Koppel, was suspicious to say the least, having refused to give a DNA sample to the police. A year after the crime, he finally confessed to the double murder, but gave no reason for why he did it. He is now serving life in prison with no chance of parole. Next up at number 3 now, we have Aaron Thomas. In 2009, 3 teenage girls in Virginia were abducted by a man with a gun on their way home from trick-or-treating on Halloween. It happened as they were crossing a car park. They were taken at gunpoint to a wooded area where 2 of them were sexually assaulted. Incredibly, the 3rd girl managed to send a text to her mum giving their location and telling her to call 911 right away. This caused the man to panic and run, but he couldn't hide. It took 2 years, but police finally arrested Aaron Thomas, a man already a suspect in dozens of sexual assault cases going back over a decade. Alright, next up at number 2 now, we have the egging. As long as trick-or-treating has been around, so has egging. If some kids don't get what they want on Halloween, they throw eggs at people. It's not nice, but it still happens. That is what happened to Carl Jackson on Halloween 1998. On that night, he was driving with his girlfriend to pick up her son from a kids party. He drove past some teenagers who threw eggs at his car. Carl got out and started arguing with them, understandably so. He got back into the car, one of the teenagers then pulled out a gun and shot him once in the head, killing him. 17-year-old Curtis Jackson was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Every single Halloween, he gets a card delivered to him in prison. It's from Carl's mother and simply reads, "I'm glad you're still there." And finally at number 1 now, we have Nema Louise Carter. This little girl was 19 months old on the night of Halloween 1977. Her parents put her to sleep, but were horrified the next morning to find that she had disappeared. Police came up with a terrifying theory, that because the windows to the bedroom were totally locked, her abductor must have been hiding in the closet that whole night and snuck out of the house with her when the parents were asleep. A month later, some local kids were playing in an abandoned house nearby. They opened up the old fridge in the kitchen, and to their horror, Nema's decomposed body came tumbling out. The cause of death was asphyxiation. The case still remains a total mystery to this day. Coming in at number 10 now, we have Taylor Van Diest. On Halloween 2011, this 18-year-old headed out to a party. She never came home. She was found with fatal head wounds by the side of a railway. She later died in hospital. She had been texting her boyfriend while walking to her party, and in one of the last few texts, she said she was being creeped, basically followed by someone behind her. That someone turned out to be Matthew Forrester. He had intended to sexually assault her, but smashed her head in with a flashlight when she fought back. Fortunately, his DNA was found under her fingernails, which did help bring the conviction. Coming at number 9 now, we have poison. On Halloween 1974, 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien from Texas tried some of his trick-or-treat candy. It was a pack of pixie sticks, a powdered candy. He tasted it and he said it was bitter. Then he said his stomach hurt and began vomiting and convulsing in the bathroom. He died on his way to hospital less than an hour after eating that candy. It took the police quite a while, but they eventually found the killer, Timothy's father, Ronald O'Brien. He had laced the candy with cyanide, hoping to kill his own son Timothy, and claimed $30,000 on a life insurance policy he had taken out in the boy's name. He was found guilty of murder and executed 10 years later. Next up at number 8 now, we have Yoshihiro Hattori. In 1992, this 16-year-old Japanese exchange student was living in Baton Rouge. He was invited to a Halloween party on October 17th. He arrived at the wrong house and rang the doorbell. After no answer, he and his friend started walking back to their car. That's when the owner of the home, Rodney Pierce, opened the door armed with a Magnum revolver. Yoshihiro turned around and said, "We're here for the party," as he walked towards him. Rodney told him to not come any closer, and when he still did, he shot him at point blank range, killing him. Incredibly, he was acquitted of murder after his defense team argued he was defending his own home, but he was forced to pay $650,000 to Yoshihiro's family in damages. What do you guys think of this story? I think it's a little bit crazy that he wasn't sent to prison. Coming at number 7 now, we have Chris Jenkins. This 21-year-old was at a Halloween party in a Minneapolis bar in 2002. He never made it home and disappeared that night. 4 months later, his body was found in the Mississippi River, still wearing his Halloween costume. Now, police thought that because he was drunk that night and the cause of death was drowning, it must have been an accident or perhaps a suicide. His parents, though, refused to believe this, and in 2006 it was reclassified as a homicide. This brought them no closer though to identifying the killer. One theory is that this is part of the Smiley face murders, which have involved the death of 40 male college students in the US, all from drowning and sometimes with a smiley face graffiti found near the body. Either way, the case is still unsolved. Next up at number 6 now, we have Tony Bagley. This is a tragic story of a 7-year-old who was out trick-or-treating on Halloween 1994. He was with his sister, his aunt, and his mother when he approached a street corner. Suddenly, a hooded man ran out into the street and fired a gun at the family. He then jumped into a waiting car and fled. Tony was shot in the head and later died. The case was a total mystery for the police. There were no motives, no suspects, and no leads at all. A man had just shot and killed a 7-year-old for seemingly no reason at all. In the years since then, the case has remained cold. There is a $100,000 award for any information that could help the investigation.
In our number 5 spot today, we have The Hitchhiker. This story starts off on an extremely stormy Halloween night. A man is driving down the highway just trying to make it to his destination safely when he sees a hitchhiker on the side of the road. Shocked that anyone would be hitchhiking in this bad of a storm, he figured that he must have been in a huge rush and pulled over to pick the man up. The hitchhiker got in the car and the pair took off. The hitchhiker was giving off some weird vibes and was mostly silent for the ride, so the driver began asking him simple questions to get a conversation started and to try and get to know the stranger that he had just picked up. The hitchhiker gave mostly one-word responses and didn't give away much information about where he had been or where he was going. As they drove, the radio was playing a news show because the hitchhiker had mentioned that he wasn't much of a music person. After several miles of travel, the news announcer on the radio said that there were reports of a patient escaping from a psychiatric institution. The hitchhiker quickly turned the channel, saying that he hated the news. Guy hates music, hates news, what are we supposed to listen to? The driver didn't reply to this, and the hitchhiker picked up on what the driver must have been thinking and said, "Don't worry, I'm not the killer." Okay. The driver continued to pry and asked what the hitchhiker did for a living. He revealed that he was a writer and was currently working on a book about a serial killer. The driver decided not to respond to this and just focus on the road and getting to where he could just drop this guy off. The driver turned the news channel back on only to hear a new announcement that they had stated they were getting more information on the escaped patient. They said that his name was Simon Hughes and that he is extremely dangerous and unpredictable. They said that the patient had escaped by pretending to be one of the hospital staff and that he had stolen a car and drove off. This prompted the hitchhiker to ask the driver what he said his name was. The driver responded with, "My name is Simon Hughes." Growing up hearing this story, I learned what a plot twist was. 8-year-old Olivia never saw that coming. Nope, blindsided. In our number 4 spot today, we have the horrible predictions. A recurring Halloween myth is that there is this imminent threat of mass slayings. The story always has some sort of a psychic predicting these horrible things on some kind of a news program, but the details of what is going to happen are always like annoyingly vague. It'll suggest that the threat is against something starting with the letter M or some other really vague clue that drives everyone into a panic, or at least a large number of the population. With the internet nowadays and Photoshop and memes, this is one legend that is only getting way easier to spread each year. In our number 3 spot today, we have the tattoo troubles. This is a classic Halloween warning that has been circulating around, and it has to do with those temporary tattoos that sometimes get handed out on Halloween. You may or may not have been warned before that these tattoos might be laced with something. Despite these terrifying tales, there has never been a recorded instance of this happening, and I mean, when we really think about it, that logistically makes sense. But just like checking the Halloween candy thing, if it's not true, that's great, but I'll still err on the side of caution, just in case. In our number 2 spot today, we have knock knock. This legend starts off with a man describing an old apartment he used to live in with an annoying upstairs neighbor. The neighbor was a weird looking guy who always kept to himself, but every night around midnight there would be a strange knocking noise coming from the upstairs apartment. It wasn't extremely loud, but because he was a light sleeper, it was really frustrating for him. Because of how often this happened, he started to realize that it was the same knocking pattern every time. It was like a record playing over and over with the same amount of time in between each knock. He ended up moving out and moving past this neighbor, and then several years later the man is helping his new daughter that he has with her homework, and she is learning simple phrases in Morse code. She knocked one on the table and he instantly recognized this phrase as the same knocking pattern his neighbor had done all of those years before. He of course had to ask her what it meant, and she laughed and replied, "It's the easiest one. It's the one to call for help." In our number 1 spot today, we have Bloody Mary. This is a classic urban legend year-round, but if there's any time that Bloody Mary is really thriving, it's definitely around Halloween. I mean, remember the whole thinned veil thing? There's a couple tales behind who Bloody Mary is. Some say she's a revenge-hungry witch from Salem, others say she's Queen Mary I of England. Either way, whoever she is, it's best to just leave her alone, but people choose not to. Chanting Bloody Mary in front of a mirror in the dark is said to make her apparition appear, which people have said appears as a corpse, a ghost, or a witch. From here, a number of things may or may not happen. Participants may endure the apparition screaming at them, cursing at them, harming them, stealing their soul, drinking their blood, or scratching their eyes out. See, I told you, best to leave the gal alone, Halloween or otherwise. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Two Realms. To start this list off today, we've got to take it right back to the origins of Halloween, or All Hallows Eve as it used to be called. Legend has it that around this time of year, the veil between our world and the spirit world thins and the two worlds collide. This makes it easier for spirits to cross over to the realm of the living and vice versa. The origins of Halloween date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. This was an end-of-year celebration 2,000 years ago that marked the end of summer and harvest and marked the beginning of dark, cold winters, which was often a time marked with death. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated because they believed that the ghosts of the dead were returning to Earth. These ghosts would cause trouble, they'd damage crops, but it was also thought that druids, which are Celtic priests, would be able to make predictions for the future. Aside from these ancient origins, there are many other cultures that have similar types of celebrations, believing the same thing, that the veil between the realms has thinned. In our number 9 spot today, we have the haunted house prop. This urban legend was one that was super popular back in 2014 for a very spooky reason. Legend has it that in that year there was a 71-year-old man who went completely undiscovered for over 2 weeks as he lay in a haunted house in Illinois. This man had passed away, and although people could see him, they were mistaking him as a prop or dummy that was just a part of the haunted house, not as an actual corpse. Definitely a terrifying story and an absolute nightmare. I mean, could you possibly imagine? Luckily, this is all just the stuff of urban legends, and as far as I can tell, it isn't something that actually happened. Fingers crossed. In our number 8 spot today, we have laced candy. Every year we hear countless stories of parents warning of all of the many people out there who are deranged lunatics who are lacing Halloween candy with poison. I heard it as a kid, I'm sure my parents heard it when they were kids. It's not new to hear these stories, but what I didn't know is that many of these stories are largely just the stuff of urban legends. I am certainly not suggesting that we should just stop checking the candy after coming home from trick-or-treating. You truly do never know when it comes to strangers, but what I am saying is that these cautionary tales aren't necessarily based on things that actually happened. In 1964, there was a woman named Helen who gave out insect traps that clearly were marked as poisonous, steel wool pads, and dog biscuits. She handed them out to the trick-or-treaters, but apparently she just meant it as a joke because she felt many of the children trick-or-treating at her house were too old to participate. She did end up getting arrested for this, joke or not, but the story made national news. Joel Best, who's a professor of sociology and criminal justice at the University of Delaware, actually wrote a study on this exact concept in 1985 that examined cases like this, and he found that many of these instances were pretty much all jokes that had gone awry or just unverifiable rumors, rather than people actively trying to be evil and harmful. Of course, that's not to say that it's never happened, it definitely has, but the most famous cases of these sort of Halloween poisonings didn't come from strangers handing out candy, and instead happened by family members towards other family members. Definitely still check the candy, it's important to do so, but also don't believe all of the rumors you hear. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Headless Horseman. This is a classic Halloween tale that many of us are likely familiar with. This Halloween sort of figure originated in the 1820 short story, quote, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which was written by author Washington Irving. Little did Washington know that this story and character in particular would go on to have a major influence on pop culture, even still. The legend of the Headless Horseman begins in Sleepy Hollow, New York during the American Revolutionary War, and it was here that the horseman was actually a trooper who was killed in the Battle of the White Plains on October 28, 1776. The way he died is quite gruesome, but it's no surprise because, as his name would suggest, he lost his head. While his comrades carried his body off of the battlefield, no one was waiting around to collect the pieces of his head. Eventually, when they buried him in the cemetery, he later rose from the dead as a ghost, determined to find his missing head. Some versions of the story have him wielding a jack-o'-lantern as a sort of replacement head. Many versions of this story claim that he rose from the dead on, you guessed it, Halloween night, which is exactly why this tale has gone on to become a classic Halloween story. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Spider Wig, not to be confused with Spider Pig. There are some spooky Halloween legends on this list today, but this one really is the stuff of nightmares. It's the classic tale of the Halloween trick-or-treater or party goer who is feeling a little more DIY inclined that year, feeling that homemade costume vibe. They head up to the attic to fetch one of Grandma's old wigs. It's the perfect thing to complete the costume, just a few bobby pins and you're good to go. The wig is itchy, but it's old and dusty, and sometimes beauty is pain. Off to the Halloween party you go, but you start to find that the wig is really itchy. Like you can't possibly ignore it kind of itchy. And you're scratching and people are noticing, but it turns out that it's not the itching that they're looking at. Suddenly, hundreds of arachnids start fleeing out of the wig and come down, crawling all over you. The party, it's spider madness. Listen, the Headless Horseman is spooky, but this one is just a little too real.
Coming in at number 5 is the Pasadena gang shootings. Members of the Bloods wanted to settle a beef in Pasadena and thought that Halloween night would be the perfect opportunity to get the revenge. They drove up on a group of teenagers who were walking out of a party and they started firing into the crowd. People scattered, but these Bloods members were still able to hit several people in the crowd. After the dust settled, 3 people were injured and another 3 were killed. The police investigated after everything was said and done, and it turned out that these gang members actually hit up the wrong party. So these guys rolled up and shot dead a bunch of teenagers who didn't have anything to do with anything they were doing. It's very sad to think about.
In our 4th spot, we have the Angry Marine. Back in 2012 on Halloween night, night, Daniel Priority, a US Army veteran, was sitting in his wheelchair waiting in line at a restaurant. He was wearing his old Army uniform as he had done every day on Halloween, but 22-year-old Christopher Dabney, a US Marine, thought that Daniel's uniform and wheelchair were fake. He thought that his costume were making fun of injured Army veterans. Well, this enraged him, and he ended up punching him twice, knocking him out of his wheelchair completely. It wasn't until later he realized, oh crap, like he's not getting up. I think it's a real situation happening. He definitely needs the use of his wheelchair. I mean, yeah, you messed up big time.
In our third spot, we have Peter Fabiano. Back in 1957, 30-year-old couple Peter and Betty Fabiano had just got into bed when they heard the doorbell ring. Thinking that it was more trick-or-treaters, Peter grabbed a bowl of candy and opened the door. But standing at the door was a woman wearing a mask. She shot Peter in the chest and fled the scene. Later, it was revealed that a woman named Joan Rabble was responsible for this murder. Joan apparently was having a relationship with Peter's wife, Betty. Peter realized his wife was having an affair, and so Betty called it off with Joan. Joan then convinced another woman, Goldine Pizer, to shoot Peter for her. They were both eventually charged with second-degree murder and were sentenced to 5 years to life in prison.
Coming in at number 2 is dressing the part. Back in 2013, Anthony Seabury would be shot and killed by someone who seemed to be a random individual. A few people saw the murder take place, and what made this murder grab headlines wasn't so much that it happened on Halloween, but that it happened on Halloween and that the killer was apparently wearing a mask from the horror movie Scream. It's thought that the killer could have been someone who fantasized about murder from watching horror movies, and when Halloween came around, he saw this as the perfect opportunity to hunt someone down and live out their fantasy. To this day, the person who killed Anthony Seabury has not been caught and could still be on the loose.
And coming in our number 1 spot on this list, we have the Candyman Killer. What a name. Back in 1974, Timothy O'Brien was already and excited to go trick-or-treating. He was probably so excited to see the city and get all the candy that he can handle. Little did he know that his dad was evil. Timothy's dad, Ronald, gave him a bunch of candy for him to eat. They were all pixie sticks. You guys remember those things? Those like straw things, you like squeeze it and then down it in like 2 seconds and then you eat like 50 more of them. Sadly, his dad laced them with cyanide. Timothy ate the sticks while he was out trick-or-treating, and he later passed out. An investigation was launched, and eventually this was traced back to Timothy's father, Ronald. But now the question stood on, why did Ronald poison his own kid? Was it meant for other kids? What on earth would bring a parent to do such a thing if that was his true intent? Ronald O'Brien was so deep in debt that he took a huge life insurance policy out on his kids and planned to kill them off so he can get the money for them. So the intentions was there. I mean, like, there are so many other ways to make money, and of course he got caught and now he's not getting any money.
Starting us off at number 10.
The disappearance of Cindy Song. Cindy was a university student who was doing what any university student would do on Halloween, and that was having fun at a party. She spent the night out with her friends, laughing and hanging out. Then she got a friend to drive her home to make sure that she got back safe. Her friend saw her walking into her apartment building, but that was the last time that anyone would ever see of her. The case was a mystery for a while, but then there was a lead. A man by the name of Hugo Marcus Selinski was suspected in the kidnapping and murder of this poor girl. People say he worked with an accomplice to pull off this crime. Things really started to heat up when police investigated Selinski's home, and they made a horrific discovery. They found a series of dead bodies in the backyard. One of the craziest parts of the story was when the person was suspected in helping Selinski killed Cindy, they actually showed up dead in Selinski's backyard. Then things got even crazier when Cindy's body was never found amongst the many things that were buried in Selinski's property. This opened everything up, being a mystery once again.
Making our way down the list at number 6, we have the Smiley Face murders. It was Halloween night and Christopher Jenkins had just left a party, but was not done celebrating. As a result, he hit up a bar with his girlfriend and friends. But sometime after midnight, Chris became separated from the group and got kicked out of the bar. Since his costume had no pockets, his girlfriend was holding onto his wallet and phone. On top of that, he got a drive to the bar, so he had no way to get home. What happened next? No one truly knows. Chris was missing for 4 months until his body was found floating in the Mississippi River. To this day, his death is undetermined. No one knows what truly happened to him. One theory is that he was the victim of the Smiley Face murders, a group of killers that target college-aged white men. All of these victims are found drowned and with a smiley face graffitied nearby. Even though no smiley face was found, some people think that this was still a possibility. Another theory is that he found out that his girlfriend was cheating on him with a married man and threatened to expose him. In fact, the man she was cheating on him with was a police officer. So as a police officer, covering up a murder is on the easier side. Who knows? This case is still a huge mystery though.
In our number 4 spot, we have the Hilton surprise. On Halloween morning in 2004, a Hilton employee in Key West, Florida experienced the surprise of her life when she found a newborn dead in a garbage bag. Probably the most horrific thing I have ever heard. It still had its umbilical cord attached. Its mother was most likely a pregnant woman that was seen walking into the hotel with 3 men earlier that morning. A witness overheard moaning in the bathroom and asked if the woman was alright. All 3 of the males waited outside of the bathroom for her, and one of them even called out to her, calling her Samantha or Sonia. That's what the witness said. The woman was in the bathroom for about 40 minutes before she and the 3 men were escorted out by security. She apparently was holding her stomach in pain, but told the guard that she had been partying too hard the night before. She and the men were never found. In our number 3 spot, we have the tragedy on ice. On Halloween night 1963, in a skating rink in Indiana State Fairground Coliseum, Indianapolis, a tragedy occurred around 11 p.m. that night. It was apparently the last skating routine of the show when the concession stand exploded and the floors caved in, which caused a crater. Gas had been leaking from the concession stand, and that is what led to the explosion. 74 people died and 400 were injured from the event. It was said that the aftermath was a nightmare to see. I can only imagine. In our number 2 spot, we have Stephen Damman. It was Halloween in 1955, and a woman by the name of Marilyn Damman took her son Stephen and her daughter Pamela to a supermarket in East Meadow, New York. She left her son and daughter outside while she was shopping. It was the 50s, so I guess that was normal then. Comment below if you were alive then and can confirm that this was normal, because it doesn't seem normal. Especially if one of them is still in a stroller, and Stephen was. When she finally left the store, she discovered that they were missing. She eventually found her daughter, but she never found Stephen. Apparently during this time, it was common that people were taken by people that couldn't procreate, and they were given different names. Even still today, a body hasn't been found, and so it is believed that Stephen is out there somewhere, just living someone else's life. Whoa, imagine. In our number 1 spot, we have Harry Houdini's death. Okay, I know what you might be thinking, Melissa. Harry Houdini's death is not terrifying. No, I suppose not. I mean, perhaps for his family it might have been terrifying, but what could potentially be terrifying about his death is the possibility that he was actually magical. Out of the 365 days in a year that he could have passed away, of course it's on Halloween, the Day of the Dead, the witch's holiday, a magical night. I don't know, is this a coincidence? Possibly, but I think not. Some people think he was killed by the Spiritualists, an organization he would apparently try to debunk, but there's seemingly no proof of this. In our number 10 spot, we have War of the Worlds. On Halloween Eve in 1938, people thought that aliens had come to Earth. This story is nuts. In 1938, way before movies and TV shows and radio programs became what they are today, 12 million people tuned into a radio program on CBS radio that declared that Martians have invaded New Jersey. It was a radio play called War of the Worlds by Orson Welles, who acted in it and wrote it. Very few people knew it was a play though, and it created mass hysteria. It is predicted that 1 in 12 people believed it to be real, approximately 1 million were terrified and ran out of their homes and panicked over an alien invasion. But honestly though, that must have been really scary to hear and not know what to do. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that like button because it really helps us out. In our number 9 spot, we have a fascist celebration. On Halloween in 1922, Mussolini, the Italian politician of the time, threw a party to celebrate the growing power of the fascist party. This happened in Rome with thousands of men who dressed in black shirts, which was a part of the party's uniform. The pictures are insane to see. I've said to myself that if I ever find myself in a place surrounded by hundreds or thousands of people, all gathered for the same purpose or person, then I will ask myself, do I think like everyone else here? Have my thoughts been manipulated in some way to appeal to a core basic human need that we all need, which is to be accepted and to belong? I'm sure the answer to the last question will be yes, let's be real. Apparently it was this day that Mussolini violently took control of the government, which led him to becoming prime minister and then the dictator. This event became known as the March on Rome. So yeah, this is definitely some pretty crazy history for the Italians and certainly a terrifying event. In our number 8 spot, we have a terrifying prediction. Apparently, American serial killer David Berkowitz predicted a killing while inside the correctional facility that he was in, and no one, of course, paid attention to it and thought he was making up a story. Typical, but also he was a prisoner, which I'm sure most assumed to be clinically insane, so it makes sense why they wouldn't have listened. They didn't realize until Halloween morning in 1981 when 2 people named Elizabeth Platzman and Ronald Sisman, who were found dead in their Manhattan home, brutally killed. Apparently, Berkowitz described their apartment perfectly and said that a cult had carried out these killings. No one was ever able to find out who killed these people, so many believe Berkowitz's prediction to be true and believe that probably this cult was very powerful and that's why no one was ever found to be connected to the killings. I'm sure that happens way more than we think. In our number 7 spot, we have Nema Louise Carter. In 1977, on Halloween night, a 19-month-old by the name of Nema Louise Carter was stolen from her bed. The windows were locked, and so the parents believed that whoever took her was hiding in her closet. Almost a month later, she was found dead in a refrigerator in an abandoned home. Before this incident, 2 twins from nearby went missing and were found in a refrigerator, and they were believed to have been taken by a woman that ended up being Nema's babysitter. So eventually, with this new evidence, the babysitter by the name of Jacqueline Rubidoux was given a life sentence in prison for the killings. In our number 6 spot, we have Orange Socks. This is a pretty wild story, but a little gruesome, so brace yourself. A woman in her 20s was killed on Halloween night in 1979. She was found severely injured and naked, but the only thing that was on her was orange socks. The police couldn't identify her, so that's how she was given the name Orange Socks. She was found just off of Interstate 35 outside of Georgetown, Texas, where it's possible that a notorious serial killer possibly was. I am referring to Henry Lee Lucas. He eventually confessed to the crime, stating that the girl's name was Joni or Judy. He was sentenced to death for it, but apparently he then retracted the confession in order to get his death sentence suspended. He was apparently notorious for admitting to crimes he didn't commit, so whether he did so or not still remains a mystery.
And speaking of safety, don't do what this person did at number 5, run in with a vampire. Reddit user Killer Orange Cat used to like to pretend he was a vampire, he says. I just need you to know that because of the context. Now, when he was 17, he was trying to get into a bar and they wouldn't let him in, so he was sulking his way out, and this other guy noticed he was looking upset. Now, my first warning to you about this story is be wary of strangers. Just to let you know. So this random guy from the line got them beers, apparently also seeming to be a vampire enthusiast, and the 2 of them began drinking in a graveyard. Now, underage drinking, that's a no-no, and 2, doing that with a stranger in a graveyard maybe isn't the best idea. Anyways, so after getting tipsy by the tombstones, this Reddit user gets up and stumbles and hits his head on a headstone and knocks himself out. When this guy wakes up, not only is his head stinging, but his left wrist is too, and the stranger he met looks like he's cut his arm and is drinking his blood. So the dude passes out again and then comes to, and the mysterious vampire-ish guy is gone and there's a cloth tied around his wrist. So just take from that story what you will, as I should be
thinking you were taking away safety first, stranger danger, be careful, but let's move on to the next one. Number 4, mystery man with a chain. This one comes from John Has Stories on Reddit. He was only 5 years old when it happened. On Halloween day, his mom noticed a man in a mask walk around swinging a chain. No other children around, there was no apparent reason for it, other than possibly a costume on Halloween. If I decided to go out for a walk on Halloween, I may wear a mask, you know, to get into character, or I would hold a chain, maybe to like lock up a bike or something, but both, it kind of seems a little creepy, and they were getting the same vibe. So anyways, his mom had seen this guy in a mask holding a chain during the day, and that night, while the little 5-year-old boy was trying to sleep, he hears scratching and banging on his window. It kept happening until it faded, and then there was nothing. It turns out that nothing came out of it, but what or who had been making that noise. John Has Stories says it still scares him to think about what it could have been because they had no reasonable explanation at the time. Okay, on to number 3, wrong house. On Halloween in 1992, Yoshihiro Hattori was going to a house party with his friend Webb Haymaker, and they were both on exchange, so they were hoping for a fun time. They were in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and they were looking for a house in the country, which was supposed to be the address for the party. Thinking they arrived at the right house, they made their way to the front door. After trying to get in and knocking on the front door, they had no response and decided to try to get in through the back, thinking that might be the right way into the party. But the thing was, it wasn't the right house, and unfortunately, it was a fatal mistake. Rodney Piers, the homeowner, thought the people trying to get into his house were burglars and shot Yoshihiro. The 16-year-old exchange student died, so be careful which houses you are approaching. Next is another instance where you should be on the lookout during a night of trick-or-treating. Warning that this one mentions sexual assault. At number 2, a parent's nightmare. On Halloween in 2009, 3 teenage girls were out for a night of trick-or-treating. Expecting to just go door to door for candy, their night took a turn for the worst. In Woodbridge, Virginia, a man by the name of Aaron Thomas threatened the girls with a gun before sexually assaulting 2 of them. During this, the 3rd girl called her mom once she found an instance to use her phone, and this caused Thomas to flee. 2 years later, he was caught, but that night is enough to scare anyone away from wanting to go trick-or-treating again. So I recommend walking with a parent if you're going trick-or-treating. It's what I like to do, at least for a bit. But on to our final story at number 1, A Vengeance in the Valley. In Napa Valley on Halloween in 2004, 3 housemates, Leslie, Adrienne, and Lauren, were handing out candy to trick-or-treaters that evening. Then they all went to sleep. At 2 a.m., Lauren woke after hearing Adrienne scream. So she ran outside, but then heard screams again, so she ran back in. Once she was back inside, she saw that both of her friends had been stabbed. She called the police, but her friends unfortunately didn't make it. It turns out Adrienne's best friend's fiance didn't like how close Adrienne and her best friend were. Eric Koppel, the fiance and alleged murderer, was jealous and took it out in the worst way possible. 1, if you are full of a lot of feelings, please find someone to talk to because it helps. And 2, safety first is what I'm taking away from all of these stories. So just be on the lookout, be safe. Happy Halloween, but like be safe. Alright, at number 10, we have costume switch up. This story comes from Let's Read _YouTube on Reddit, and this user says this experience happened to him years ago when a couple of buddies and him went to a neighborhood party. It was a great party, a bunch of people, all in costume, and his friend Danny had what he said was a pretty convincing Michael Myers costume. The whole group was having a great time at the party, but it was enough of a banger that after a couple of hours, the police showed up to slowly shut the party down. The group of guys decided they wanted to keep the party going and went to the nearest licensed establishment for some booze. When they were there, the narrator of this story sees that Danny's fake knife in his Michael Myers costume doesn't look so fake anymore, and so he grabs it from his hand thinking his friend decided to get a little too in character and decided to borrow a knife from the house party. But then his phone rings, and the person on the phone is Danny. He hears Danny's voice on the other end of the line asking where the group went, and he realizes that this Michael Myers isn't his Michael Myers. Luckily, the group chases the creepy stranger away, but please, all of you better be double checking to make sure that your friends are your friends, especially when they're wearing masks. If they're not wearing masks, you should be able to tell. And now I just gave you the short version of this story, but if you want to check out the full version of this story or any of the others, be sure to check out our sources in the description below. But for now, on to number 9, Zombie Grudge. Local haunted houses sometimes bring in locals to be the actors, which can sometimes lead to an extra special scare if they aren't your biggest fan. Reddit user Killer Orange Cat had an experience like this. He was going through one with his friends, putting on a brave face for the monsters because he knew they weren't allowed to touch him, which is typically policy unless you sign a special waiver. But there was this zombie in the 4th room, a room he went into alone, and the zombie kept getting closer and closer to him until the zombie grabbed him and slammed him against the wall and said his name. It was then he realized it was a guy he knew named Richard that didn't like him. Richard held up a knife to his neck and said that no one would hear him, and then it looked like he was gonna stab him in the chest. Richard did hit him, but it was with the hilt of the blade and left no mark on him, but it was enough of a scare. There were no witnesses, so Ricky did end up getting away with it. So I'm already deterred from haunted houses, so just be wary of local ones, because the actors, if you have any grudges, might be people you know. But not everyone gets just a scare in a haunted house, so buckle yourself up for the next few. Here is a warning of possible suicide, both accidental and intentional, for the next 3 numbers. At number 8, not a decoration. During Halloween in 2005, citizens of Frederica, Delaware thought there was a remarkably accurate decoration in their neighborhood. It was a body hanging from a tree. Around 7:30 a.m., people began to notice it but dismissed it as a Halloween prank. 1 hour passed, then another, and then close to 11 a.m., the neighbors realized the body wasn't a prop. Authorities were called to the scene and it was identified as the body of a 42-year-old woman. So, for many reasons, don't use decorations that appear to be hangings. It's not cool. And in 1990, there were 2 unfortunate deaths during Halloween due to accident or mistake. The first is our number 7, a haunted house brings horror. At a Halloween party, a group of friends was staging a haunted house in their basement. A fun idea in general. There were fake spider webs and plastic bats decorating an aunt's house. William Anthony Odom, at age 15, was staging a gallows scene. During this, authorities said the noose tightened around his neck somehow, and he passed away. If you would like to do a haunted house, there are other things you can stage, and if this first story from 1990 won't deter you to do something like hanging, hopefully a second one might. The second unfortunate passing from 1990 is number 6, Halloween Hayride. Ocean Haunted Hayrides Incorporated in New Jersey ran hayrides featuring costume performers. There were different scenes for the riders of the hayride to take in, going through. One of these scenes was a hanging scene where a 17-year-old actor named Brian Jewell was hung without the prop rope going around his neck, and then he would say a haunting speech. On one of the rides, the driver noticed the haunting speech wasn't being said and stopped to check on the boy, but it was too late. Brian was hung for real with the noose around his neck, and police said the death appeared to be accidental. So know your rights when it comes to work safety, please. So now I've shown you 2 different instances of fatal mistakes from staged hangings, so don't do it. Safety first. Talking about animals, another place you shouldn't go, an abandoned zoo. And I think it goes without saying that you should avoid pet cemeteries on Halloween, and just in case you weren't thinking about zoos, I'm letting you know, don't go to abandoned zoos either. Sure, it's free to check out this abandoned zoo in Griffith Park on Halloween, and free is nice, but don't do it. This old LA zoo was left abandoned in 1966 when the zoo decided to relocate. What used to be a place for animals that weren't treated so well is now a place left empty with man-made habitats. It's eerie to look around at the cages and think about the animals that passed away there, and during the World War there were meat shortages, so the animals unfortunately were the ones that had to pay the price and starve. Some people say they can still hear the sounds of the animals that died there, growling, moaning, grunting, and roaring, so it's not what you want to hear on a nice walk in the park. And yes, it is a part of Griffith Park, as I said, and you can go there, but the park does close at sunset, so you can't go at night, and all in all, I don't recommend it. It's creepy as all heck too, so if you go there, what if you leave with the ghost of a sad angry lion following you? That's all I'm saying. It's not what you want.
At number 4 now is Lucedio Abbey, known as one of the most haunted monasteries in Italy. Lucedio Abbey was even featured on Scariest Places on Earth, like that's no damn joke, people. It was built back in 1124, and during that time Cistercian monks lived there, and everyone thought they were just being nice monks, cultivating rice, but what they were actually doing was losing faith in God and worshipping the devil. Plot twist. Now the monks turned Lucedio into a place of cruelty, horror, and black magic. They started kidnapping villagers and sacrificing them to the devil, which is just very unmonk-like. The Catholic Church eventually found out about the rogue monks and tried them while closing down the abbey. Now they closed it altogether because they believed there was an evil inside of it that was yet to be exorcised. These days people break into it to explore and shit themselves, so I mean, fair enough. Fog appears in and around the abbey for no reason. There's a pillar inside one of the rooms that mysteriously just gets wet and is known as the crying pillar. All in all, do not go to this old abbey or any sort of old church, chapel-like establishment on Halloween. Like, that is the devil's day. Let's not do that.
Talking about abbeys, I'm back, Abbey, with number 3. Another place you shouldn't go, a cemetery.
Cemetery. The veil between this world and the next is supposedly thinnest on Hallows Eve, so you really shouldn't be pushing your luck when spirits just want to be having a good time on this day. Plus, cemeteries give off an eerie vibe even on a nice sunny day, so on Halloween that's just amplified. So let's have a look at Friend Cemetery. Sounds nice, right? It's even well kept. But the other name it's known as is Spidergates. Plus it's also referred to as the 8th gate of hell, so that kind of gives you a warning. It's hidden in the woods, so it's in a place where you have to venture away from your car, away from, relative safely in a quick getaway. And when you get there, there are no shortage of scary happenings rumored to take place there. There are rumors of rituals done by mediums or Satanists, hauntings on the ground, and even murders. And apparently you can speak to the dead at the Spidergates Cemetery too. If you leave a coin for Marmaduke Earl, walk around his grave and say his name 10 times and press your head against his gravestone, stories say he will whisper to you, telling you to leave. So let's listen to our elders and stay out of some cemeteries, alright?
Filling on number 2 slot is the West Virginia Penitentiary. Again, would you really want to go to an old non-operational prison on Halloween? Like go trick-or-treating or something? Please, do something with your lives. Now this prison was the state's first penal institution and was opened back in 1876, very gothic style, and it closed its doors in 1995, so it did have a good run. Now surprisingly, the prison's conditions were actually quite good, but it started declining rapidly at the turn of the century. It got onto the US Department of Justice's list for top 10 most violent correctional facilities in the world because of all the raping and fighting and gambling going on inside. It was extremely overcrowded to the point 3 inmates were to a cell, with one of them just sleeping on the ground, and homicides in the prison were frequent and violent. 36 homicides happened altogether, like the butchering of R.D. Wall, who was killed for snitching on the others. Even Charles Manson wanted to be at this prison, and that is not a good sign. That's not a good selling point. The worst of humanity was held in this prison. Many committed suicide, many killed each other, and the rest were hanged or executed or electrocuted. And all of the killed and forgotten refuse to be forgotten because they're very much still haunting the prison. Shadows of men have been seen frequently, and strange clanking sounds can be heard despite it being empty. Many visitors have claimed they've just walked into a cell just to see what it was like, and the door has just closed by itself, and some of the times have even locked. I'm not about that. Goodbye.
Alright, and last but not least at number 1, the Gates of Genay, New Orleans. As we've talked about, the different gates of hell are entrances, but what about the 7 gates of Genay? If you are wondering what Genay is, voodoo teachings say it's a portion of the underworld that's a plane that spirits pass through before reaching deep waters where they reunite with ancestors. But guys, some voodoo practitioners in New Orleans have said that the 7 gates of Genay are throughout the local cemeteries there. I just need to explain to you why you shouldn't try to do this or go through the gates on Halloween. First of all, it's too close to All Saints Day, which is November 1st, and the gates are said to be easier to open and more active on traditional annual holidays. And while you may think, yeah, let's bust open some portals to another plane, hold your horses. It's said that if you don't open the gates in the right order, dangerous spirits could enter our plane and drag you back to the land of the dead. Not something you should be hoping to do on Halloween. Plus, there's a guardian at each gate, and they aren't there to mess around. Their job is to protect the land of the dead from the living, so they're gonna want a better offering than some trick-or-treat candy. So let's avoid the cemeteries, the gates, and all that spooky stuff, alright?
Starting us off at number 10 is Houska Castle. Bruh, where do I even start with this one? Now located in Prague, this giant gothic castle has a chapel inside it, a knight's drawing room, and a bunch of those creepy gothic paintings whose eyes just follow you around the room. Now why you should never bloody go there on Halloween is because the chapel was actually built over a huge hole in the ground that is apparently the gateway to hell. Now this hole is so deep you can't even see the bottom of it, and legend has it that locals have seen human-animal hybrids crawl out of it, and if that's not screwed up enough, they've also seen dark-winged otherworldly creatures just fly out of there. Hell no, ain't nobody got time for that. When construction on the castle began, inmates that were sentenced to death were given the opportunity to be pardoned if they agreed to being lowered into the hole and reporting on what they saw. I would take that. I feel like most people would. Now the first guy they lowered down there began screaming within seconds, and when he came back, it looked like he'd aged 30 years because his hair had turned white. So don't go there.
talking about gateways to hell, this next one was once believed to be a gateway to the underworld. So this is number 9, Pluto's Gate, aka Plutonian. This gate is right where a temple to the underworld used to be. This is because ancient Greeks used to do rituals to the gods of the underworld here. They would sacrifice an animal to the temple, leading the animal in, and then drag the body of a dead animal out. Tourists of the temple could even buy small animals to test out the mysterious vapor of the cavern to see if it was really a gateway to the underworld. And an ancient Greek named Strabo even said, "Any animal that passes inside meets instant death. I threw in sparrows and they immediately breathed their last breath and fell." But the reason the animals die is because the fumes that come out of it are natural toxic gases. The same type that heat hot springs, but either way, it's not safe to go on Halloween to this place and try to test out to see if you can hold your breath. Not safe. Or any day. So just don't go to places on Halloween that could kill you. Just a recommendation. Any gateways, stay away.
Next at number 8 is Hoya Baciu Forest. Do I even have to say this? Like, forests should be automatic no-nos on any day of the year, not just Halloween. Dubbed the Bermuda Triangle of Romania, this forest has a very sinister reputation. Now firstly, the trees there grow out of the ground at a hook-shaped angle, so like, what the hell is up with that? Local legend claims that spirits and ghosts lurk around the crooked trees. A young girl apparently disappeared into the forest to then come out 5 years later wearing the exact same clothes and not knowing where she had been. Another legend involves a shepherd who vanished into the forest along with his sheep. Locals who have gone there, one of the most haunted forests in the world, may I add, have always reported feeling like they're being touched by things and hearing footsteps in the distance. And it doesn't stop at the paranormal, it gets extraterrestrial as well. There's no shortage of rumors of alien encounters in the forest as well. Some speculate that the girl who went missing was actually abducted by aliens and returned 5 years later with her memory erased. First of all, let me just preface this, if you're going to a forest on Halloween, at night, with a group of friends or alone, you're gonna get killed. That's it.
Alright then, on to number 7, Beechworth Asylum. And I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but how about not checking out a former asylum on Halloween? Like, any of them? For instance, this one, Beechworth Asylum in Victoria, Australia. It used to be known as the Mayday Lunatic Asylum and then the Mayday Hills Hospital. It was operating for 128 years, and during that time over 3,000 patients died there. And this wasn't a hospital where people are known to pass from illness. It was for the mentally ill. They are meant to get back out there in the world. Plus, it only took 2 signatures for you to get checked in there, and 8 to check you out. You could be stuck there even when you were feeling better. So people were known to jump from windows to their death to try to escape. So you know there is some paranormal activity there. The most frequently spotted apparition is Matron Sharp, who is said to have once been a beloved nurse. As the former hospital is now used as a part of La Trobe University, some students have seen her on what is now the school campus. She walks down a staircase and into the classrooms, and that's not what I aim to see when I'm trying to learn. Another spirit possibly on the premises is one of the old kitchen hands at the hospital. What used to be where the kitchen is now the Bijou Theater, and some people think they have felt what they think is Tommy Kennedy poking at their ribs and tugging on their clothes, which I try to avoid all distractions when I'm at school, so having a ghost poke me or like pull at my clothes isn't what I'm looking for, so just don't go there Halloween any day. Just avoid the spooky.
Now at number 6 is Pripyat Amusement Park. My Russian was so good, my Russian accent there. Either way, now I'm all for going to amusement parks on Halloween. I'm actually doing that as well. They usually do haunted houses and things like that. It's a lit time, but old abandoned theme parks is a no. No. May 1st of 1986 was the day this amusement park was meant to open its doors for the first time, but alas it never happened. The plan was abruptly cancelled on the 26th of April following the Chernobyl disaster that occurred mere kilometers away. Now the park was actually open the next day to distract residents from the radiation hotpot that they were living in. The abandoned park sort of became a symbol for the disaster. You can see the abandoned falling apart Ferris wheel and the bumper car tracks, and it's just very eerie to look at. Honestly, even though it's been a long time since the disaster, the levels of radiation in and around the park are still deadly. But that's not even my main reason for saying don't go there on Halloween, even though it is the main reason, but that's a cop-out reason. Now firstly, everyone is more on their bullshit than usual on Halloween, so people will just want to go there to be bad or get their spooky adrenaline rush, which fine, great, but don't be one of those people. Now, radiation leads to mutation. That's like 1 + 1 = 2. If you've seen the horror movie The Chernobyl Diaries, then you know what could be lurking around the disaster-stricken area, and it is not fun and it is not inviting. You want to be killed by mutant hybrids and mutated animals? Be my guest. Actually, don't.
Taking our number 3 spot, we have the Hanging Man of Halloween. All of us have been to a Halloween store and seen certain decorations that have scared us by looking so realistic.
Like Spirit Halloween, the ones that you like press and they pop out of you, those ones terrify me, but I also love them. Well, this urban legend states that certain Halloween decorations that people put up of bodies or mannequins hanging from houses and trees are actually real, dead, rotting corpses done by either suicide, murder, or even accidental deaths.
Halloween props and decorations have become so common and realistic that even the most graphic decorations you would think twice about. Seriously guys, keep your eyes peeled this Halloween. Coming in at number 2, we have the spider wig. Everyone wants to get all dolled up for Halloween, but the thing is, this can all be super expensive. So everyone who wants to look good might be also looking for some discount goods they can take home. That's where this urban legend comes into play. Apparently there was a girl who wanted a black witch's wig for a Halloween costume, but everywhere she looked they were either too expensive or terrible quality. Eventually she found a costume shop that was tucked away at the far end of town. When she walked in there, it seemed like no one had entered this shop for ages, but at this point she was desperate and figured she would look around to see what she could find. After a little bit of searching, she finally found it. It was an exquisite piece, a massive wig that looked like it was made from real hair. She took it right to the cashier and then took it home. It fit perfectly with her costume. That night she was at a party and someone commented that there was something on her shoulder. She brushed it off and a massive spider plopped onto the ground. People shrieked as hundreds of spiders started pouring out of her wig and all over her body. On the bright side, she had the scariest costume that night.
And in our number 1 spot, we have Halloween night of 1962. A couple of years ago, this creepy photo was circulating the internet. The photo was a group of people in masks, apparently attending a Halloween costume party. The legend goes that right after that photo was taken, the man in the black mask in the photo locked all the doors from the outside and tried to kill everyone at the party, but only succeeded at killing 7 individuals with a kitchen knife. Now it's said that the man managed to escape and has never been found. In 1969, police found the killer's mask, but to this day, the killer has never been caught. Thankfully, this is a completely fabricated story used to scare kids on Halloween.
Coming in at number 8, we have the Forever Mask. Halloween is about dressing up as something or other and walking door to door to get enough candy to keep your blood sugar levels blasted through the roof until the next Halloween comes around. Either that or pull off a ton of pranks with fireworks and hopefully keep all your fingers. Well, there's an urban legend that is about those who don't respect the laws of Halloween. People are trying to ruin this sacred day for everyone else. The legend says that there are spirits of the dead who will walk the earth on Halloween, and they like all the horror stuff we do because they see it as us honoring them. But if they walk the earth and they see someone who disgraces the day and they are wrapped in a costume, they will curse them to never be able to take their costume off. It seems like a pretty dark outcome, but very easy to avoid. Just don't be rude on Halloween and you won't have to worry about any of this. This urban legend sounds like it was pulled right from the Goosebumps book, The Haunted Mask, but who knows, maybe it's true.
Making our way down the list, number 7, we have the initiation. Back in 2008, there was a rumor going around started by an email hoax. The email warned people of a gang initiation that was going to take place on Halloween night. According to the email, a gang was holding an initiation where recruits would have to kill 31 women, one for every day of October. Then people received another email saying that they were going to kill 140 women. So it was advised for women to stay home, stay safe, and to lock their doors. Thankfully, this was all just one big Halloween hoax.
Coming in at number 6, we have the Buckley family. The legend of the Buckley family began when all the children in the neighborhood decided to get in on one prank, where they were all going to get a dummy and pretend to chop its head off on Halloween night.
The Buckley family children, Susan and John, had a different plan. They thought it would be funny to actually go ahead and behead their mother.
So when trick-or-treaters came to the door, they got an axe and murdered her. Soon after, the police were called, and by then the children were long gone. At number 5 we have Halloween gang initiation. As time goes on, we get new urban legends that will fit our changing culture. The Halloween night gang initiation was a rumor that got passed around and even made its way onto the news. The public was warned that the world famous gang, the Bloods, was going to be doing a gang initiation on Halloween night. This initiation consisted of them killing 31 women on Halloween. Seems like a bit much. I mean, I've never been in a gang, but I'm sure after the first 15 you'd be like, you know, this guy is very serious. I think we should let him in. I mean, if I had a gang and someone wanted in, all they would have to do is take me on a really nice date and then afterwards give me their Disney Plus password, but I'm just a simple guy. This rumor also got so out of control that the number skyrocketed to 141 women. Thankfully, it was revealed that it was all a hoax, so ladies across the world could go out on Halloween night without worried about being murdered. Well, worried less about being murdered. I don't know how much you normally worry about being murdered. At number 4 we have Where's Mama's Head? A famous Halloween picture of Susan and John Buckley. It shows them standing with their mother, Susan with an axe in her hand, and John with his mother's head in his hands. And also, their mom's decapitated body kneels between them. This picture is over 100 years old and it looks terrifying, and the story behind it is all the kids in the neighborhood were going to get dummies and cut their heads off as a Halloween prank. John and Susan wanted to be the best pranksters in town and they cut off their mom's head. Then they took this photo. The police came to the house and the Buckley siblings were nowhere to be found. What the police did find was their mom's body half eaten. I guess after they killed their mom they were like, wait, who's gonna make dinner? Not a lot of foresight with these two. However, this picture was photoshopped. The two kids never killed their mom and then took a picture with her head. Like I said before, this photo is over 100 years old, so that means there would have needed to be a third person involved to take the picture. There was no like setup camera picture thing back then. And that guy probably would have been like, man, that dummy looks awfully real and awfully familiar. Here's the real photo. At number 3 we have Haunted Halloween Doll. Apparently this urban legend was actually the inspiration for the movie Chucky. It was back in the 1900s and there was a young boy named Robert. He was hanging out doing whatever kids in the 1900s would do, probably throwing rocks and being illiterate, I don't know. Well, it was Robert's lucky day because his maid had a little gift for him. It was a little doll which was also named Robert. Not a very good idea. I mean, if you're gonna give someone a doll, at least give them a doll that doesn't have a name. Shouldn't they be allowed to name it? Well, apparently this doll was named Robert, so it would be forever linked to this boy because it had a voodoo curse on it. Huge bummer. That would be a gift that I would definitely re-gift to someone else. Well, the doll tormented the kid for his whole life until it eventually drove him to kill himself. Ugh, bummer. At number 9 we have the 13th floor. When you go into a building, why is there no 13th floor? We all know the superstition about unlucky number 13 and Friday the 13th. I mean, there's an entire movie series about it that gave birth to one of the most famous horror characters of all time. But there is a great urban legend that merges Halloween and the creepy 13th floor. Apparently way back when the 13th floor was still a thing in buildings, someone decided to put on a haunted house in one. A multi-layered haunted house that spiraled all the way up to the 13th floor. Each level of the house was a different theme and scarier than the last. This 13-layered dip of doom was so scary that most people turned around and headed back to their homes with pee-filled costumes. And those were the lucky ones, because everyone who managed to make their way all the way to the final stage was never heard from again. That's a crummy reward for being the bravest person around. Death? Maybe they were never heard from again because there was a bunch of gold up there and they took it and moved to the Bahamas. Well, that would be better. At number 8 we have LSD tattoos for kids! More drugs for kids. Again, I would like to say no one will do this. Drugs are expensive and no one wants to waste them on your screaming toddler. Although if I was gonna dose a misbehaving kid with any sort of drug, it would probably be LSD. A few drops in his little sippy cup and I'd be like, hey, deal with your ego, you're annoying to everyone. In the 70s when LSD was all over the news, a rumor got started that some people were putting LSD in those pressable tattoos for kids. Parents all over America started to throw them out because they didn't want little Timmy to reach a higher plane, man, like really trip out, dog. At number 7 we have college campus murders. Killing a bunch of co-eds all dressed slutty on Halloween night? Wow, so original. If you're gonna be a serial killer, at least bring something new to the table. Killing hot chicks on a spooky holiday is about as original as a seductive vampire movie. Well, this legend started in the 60s and it does have a little bit of flair to it. The legend involves a TV psychic making a prediction that a bunch of people will be killed on a college campus on Halloween night. Everyone goes crazy and college kids are too frightened to run around super drunk and half naked, and they spend their Halloween in their bedrooms watching scary movies, hoping next year they can hook up with someone they'll never talk to again. Of course, this never happened. It was a rumor kicked around probably by some teens. But I don't know, maybe for fun we should all go to a psychic and see if we can get them to tell us about a bunch of grisly murders that are on the horizon. Also, if you're psychic and you see the future and there's a bunch of people getting massacred, shouldn't you do something about it? And number 6, we have Halloween Hitchhiker. You're never really supposed to pick up hitchhikers, but I think you should be extra careful on Halloween night. It's just an extra spooky time, and you don't want some random person on the side of the highway to feel inspired by the date and then chop you into little pieces. The legend of the Halloween Hitchhiker is a tale as old as time. A trucker picks up a lady walking on the side of the highway. This is on Halloween night. She gets in, they start to talk for a bit, and the conversation leads her to talking about a gruesome murder that she witnessed. The girl who she describes in the murder is strangely similar to herself. The trucker is starting to get very freaked out. Luckily they're close to her destination. He lets her out of the cab of the truck, she thanks him, and then when he looks in his rearview mirror to see where she goes, she vanishes. Spooky.
We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the praying for the dead. This is an old school tradition that may have inspired trick-or-treating. So back in the day, people would go around door to door asking for money or food. In return, they said that they would pray for the dead. But here's the thing. If you denied them, then they would get upset and they would trash your front lawn or your garden, etc. So you kind of were obligated to give them treats, or else you'd get the trick. In our 4th spot, we have the Halloween costumes. What are you guys going as for Halloween this year? Let me know in the comments below. Now, how did the whole dressing up for Halloween thing even start? Well, during Samhain, when people thought that spirits were crossing over into their world, there were a lot of people that weren't okay with this. They were like, hell no, I don't want to mingle with these spirits, don't come near me. So they thought if they dressed up as one, that they would be left alone. Like, this is POV, I'm the spirit, like, oh bro, you're not a human, you're just a spirit like me, sick, I'll leave you alone, see you later in the afterlife or whatever. That's just one theory as to why costumes became associated with Halloween. At number 3 today, we have the sacrifices. So back in the day, the Celts considered November 1st as the day of death. Why? Well, by that time, leaves were falling and it was getting darker earlier on, and it was getting colder. So they believed that their sun god was losing strength and that Samhain, the lord of death, was taking over. So in order to appease Samhain, druid priests would lead worship ceremonies. They would offer horses, cats, black sheep, and even humans. They would shove them into wicker cages and burn them to death. They figured this would appease him and keep the spirits from harming them. In our 2nd spot, we have the trick-or-treating again. Now, this is one of the things that inspired the whole trick-or-treating thing. So continuing on with my last point about the sacrifices, how did they get these sacrifices? Well, druid priests would go house to house asking for animals or humans that would be given over to Samhain. Those that gave up stuff were promised prosperity. Those that didn't were cursed and threatened. Also, it was believed that the wandering spirits would get hungry, so if you set out a treat for them, then they would leave you be and not trick ya. Nowadays, the candy replaced the whole human sacrifice thing, so I'm glad that we changed our ways. I prefer candy. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the fairies. Now you may be thinking, oh fairies, they're so cute, I'll go as a fairy for Halloween. Well, think again. Back in the day, fairies were evil. It was believed that Halloween was a very important day for fairies. And on that day, they would steal babies, or trick you, or even hurt you. They also apparently would hunt after the spirits of those who passed away and bring them down to the gates of hell. And if you bumped into them as they were doing so, well, you were going with them. I never thought fairies could be so evil, so just saying.